Have you ever stopped to wonder what really shapes a person's mind? I mean, how do our hidden histories, our family's past, and our most private experiences all combine to forge the thinkers we become? Today, we're going to dive deep into the life of the influential psychoanalyst Warren Colman to try and understand what he calls his personal equation.
So let's just start with this idea from Carl Jung. It's really powerful, right? Children live out the unlived lives of their parents. This concept is right at the heart of the story we're exploring today. Just keep this thought in the back of your mind as we go, because it's the key that unlocks so much of Coleman's own journey.
So what exactly is this personal equation? Well, you can think of it as the unique formula, the special recipe of our personal history, our emotional baggage, and all our intellectual lightbulb moments that, together, make us who we are. We're going to use this very lens to figure out how all these different elements came together to create Warren Colman, the analyst.
Okay, let's start at the beginning, the first part of his equation, his roots as an outsider.
You see, these are the real foundational layers of his identity. You have his grandparents, who had to flee persecution in Eastern Europe, then his parents, who had to survive poverty and war in London's East End. This entire history created a really deep sense of being an outsider, and it profoundly shaped him, in his own words, by the long shadow of Jewish suffering, exile, and persecution. And this brings us right back to that quote we started with, because it wasn't just the grand sweep of history that shaped him, but something much more personal, the unrealized dreams of his parents. You know, their unlived lives ended up becoming this powerful, driving force in his own life.
Just listen to this memory he has of his father. You can almost feel that sense of unfulfilled potential, can't you? His dad was a self-taught man, became an accountant, but you can tell he longed for a life of the mind. And that his mother, she was always trying to analyze everyone around her, almost unconsciously pointing toward the kind of therapist she needed. So Colman, well, he effectively became the family psychiatrist, living out the intellectual and analytical life that his parents never could.
So that's the foundation. Now for the next major piece of his personal equation. This is where his journey takes a really sharp turn, from a kind of detached intellectual interest to a deeply personal calling. His path actually starts pretty early, at 17, with a book about Freud that sparked his curiosity. But then at university, he found academic psychology to be, well, pretty sterile, all about rats, as he put it. So he decided to explore the human mind through literature and sociology instead. But the real shift, the big pivot point, happens when he's 26. And it's not academic at all.
And this distinction is absolutely crucial. For Colman, Freud was fascinating, a subject to be studied from a distance. Jung, on the other hand, was an emotional revelation. It wasn't something he just read about in a book. It was something he felt. It spoke, in his own words, absolutely to my heart and soul. So what on earth could cause a shift that profound?
It all came down to this, a deeply personal, painful, and powerful experience. He was right in the middle of what he calls a passionate, unrequited love affair. A friend of his suggested he look into Jung's concept of the anima, and when Colman read about it, it was a total lightbulb moment. The theory wasn't abstract anymore. It was a perfect mirror of his inner world. It gave him the language and the meaning to understand his own emotional turmoil, and that's the moment Jung became essential to him. So we've looked at his roots, and we've seen his big intellectual awakening. Now let's see how this whole personal equation forged his unique craft as a professional, the relational analyst. The core of his approach is this concept, intersubjectivity. It's basically the idea that you can't understand someone in a vacuum. Their behavior is always a reaction, a response to someone or something else. This perspective came out of his early work with couples and was really influenced by the radical psychiatry of R.D. Laing, who famously argued that madness was often a perfectly coherent response to a mad family. I love this quote. It just brilliantly illustrates how he puts that theory into practice. He compares doing analysis to playing improvisational music. It's not about following some rigid script, it's about being present, being responsive, and being creative, all within a disciplined framework. You're right there on the edge, but you're not lost. Yeah, think of a master jazz musician. Colman tells this great story about the pianist Herbie Hancock playing a totally wrong chord during a Miles Davis solo. But Davis didn't even flinch. He just paused, listened, and then played a new phrase that made that wrong chord sound perfectly, beautifully right. That is the skill of a relational analyst, working with whatever is happening in the moment with total fluidity and experience.
All right, let's bring it all together. Let's look at the culmination of this whole journey, his reflections on a lifetime of practice and the kind of wisdom it creates.
He brings up this ancient Greek idea of phronesis, which basically means practical wisdom. This is the kind of knowledge you just can't get from a textbook. It's built up, bit by bit, instance by instance, through lived experience. For an analyst like Colman, it's the sum total of every session, every single interaction, every wrong note that got turned into something right.
And this leads to his really beautiful reframing of that famous Frank Sinatra song. For Colman, being able to do things my way isn't about ego or pride. It's about gratitude. When he remembers his father looking so longingly at that bookshelf, he recognizes that just having the opportunity to fulfill your potential, well, that's a profound privilege, and it's one that was denied to so many.
So there you have it. We've explored Warren Colman's personal equation, his family's unlived lives, his own personal passions, and his incredible intellectual journey. And that, of course, brings the question right back to you. What are the hidden variables, the unlived lives, and the pivotal moments that make up your personal equation?